to computer. And well, maybe Susie, can I hand over to you and Stella to set the setting for this hour?
Hello, everyone, and everyone who is awake. Thanks, Dave, for being here. Our conversation this morning is about intentionally living in community and being the me in the we, which is a very interesting experience because it is it's so broad of different layers of let's say, how do we build community? Our world, community, you start on the inside of self. And building community and showing up for community is a whole journey of progress of self, of how you live with yourself and how you live with others. And it seems these days, with all the changes going on, a lot more people are looking and searching for community to belong and to feel safe. It seems as though we come from a world where we are separated. There's Sam the man.
Can I pop in there? Can I jump in there, Suze? I think this is a lovely follow on after the sort of we just came onto the tail end of your AI conversation, and for me, there's a very clear connection between where the world is moving in terms of technology and code sort of pushing us online and moving towards a need for community for being able to counterbalance the effects, as it were, of AI to what it actually means to be human and what it means to live in community. So for me, there's a very clear connection between where we're potentially going and how we counteract that through community. That makes sense. And I think this is a perfect time to welcome Sam. Morning, Sam.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Wow, what a lovely gathering here. So lovely to see your faces. Amazing. Well, I'm
Do
going
we,
to
we
add a
say,
thread in.
yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Oh, well, first, my name is Naidoo. I live with these two beautiful women, Suzie May and Stella. We are co-creating what we call intentional community, and many others around the world, I believe, are doing the same. There's a strong yearning in the world for this thing that we call intentional community, communities of shared vision and shared practice, communities of practice. So I woke up with a juicy thought this morning. Not one of those thoughts, but and I was thinking about this concept of requisite tension. So we had this dance at our place recently, an ecstatic dance session. And this was a journey into the subconscious. And the title of my friend who's a DJ in somewhere in Las Vegas, she created this set called Requisite Tension. And I thought that was such a lovely title. So the thought this morning was about, as we talk about this space between, the space between conversations, the space between you and I, we create this intentional container that takes us away from just the me and the you. It becomes this space that we call the we space, right? And I was thinking about how important it is to have variety in that space. It's so easy in community, in intentional community, to get caught up in this. We all vibe together. You think like I think, and we get on so well. But where's the tension in that space? And if you think about life and diverse ecosystems, they evolve through that diversity. So that liminal space, yeah, exactly. That's so good because the concept that the person just mentioned in the chat speaks to the space. The Maoris actually call it, they have a term for it, and they call it Va. And they use that to describe the ocean that connects the islands. So instead of looking after myself and you, what they do is they tend to Va. And Susie, Stella, and I, we've been having conversations about that. That the vast space becomes like the soil for us. When you tend to land, when you want to grow food, you grow soil, right? That's what you focus on. And that happens underground. And what happens is over time, through this loving care and tending to, the soil starts to become this reserve, this bank. So when I am, or Susie, or Stella, or anybody in your community needs to draw on some energy, when they're in a state of low energy, they can tap into this field of Va, this liminal space between us, as something that, as a bank almost, you can think of it. Anyway, I wanted to see that there with the thought of requisite variety, like how ecosystems they evolve through diversity, and how sometimes that tension, when you bring somebody into your space, when the immune system of our social organism is strong enough, and we can welcome somebody into that space who's really different, who sees the world from a different perspective, yet still aligned on that vision, that shared vision and values. I think it's a really healthy, juicy dynamic to bring into that space of community. Yeah, let me stop there.
You don't have to. You go on.
I don't want to go on for too much.
Yeah, I'm gonna step in there continue that thread of living in community and coming into community is a very different experience as to having a world of the me. And if ever there was a moment to realize that you are one, which continues from previous conversations of us being one organism, living in close proximity to people who are not necessarily your family, blood family, is the biggest classroom one can actually have to learn about yourself. Because you are community, you are meeting all aspects of yourself outside of yourself, where you are really stretched on all your lessons and all your insecurities and all your strengths as well. But you have to be so in sync with yourself in order to be that person who can commune. Community is communing with self, and then outside of self, communicating with others outside. And it has been a massive classroom to be able to land in a community which has happened so organically. It's not an application form to fill in and apply for a space. It seems to be a natural, organic bringing together, minded, as San said, like-minded, common ground, common value system, common view, common goals, common vision. It is so in sync with all the little bits. So one has to start at the composting level of self, and how am I going to be with and live with others? And it's been a really big clash in the past. I've been in this community now a year and a half, and have come through all sorts of little communities for years now. Over probably the last decade, I've been on my gypsy life, and the different personalities that come in. But the most important thing is, as far as I'm concerned, is that you have to have the same vision with the same beings. To live in a community, if you live in the city and you want to come live in the country, it's a big change. One has to, for self, find your own weave of the community that holds you. The nervous system, as far as I'm concerned, all starts with one's own work that you do in your internal world. But to be held in a community of people that starts with the earth, starts with respect of Mother Earth, of what are we putting in order to move through ourselves, in order to grow, in order to live with others. We're going back in time, living in community. That's what people do. This is what the indigenous families and communities all around the world, they've kept that unit, even though it's been split with all how politics and land and all that, the core community in these individual families is there. And the segregation is so loud in others that to come back into community, you realize how dehydrated and what you are missing from being held and supported in community. And it really is a new place for the being to land in and the being to flourish in. It's a big thing of finding your way and trusting that if your community is the way you're going, I put out for what do I need? What is it that I'm looking for? Where can I grow safely, where I can bring all my gifts and talents and add value? Because you can be a person in community that just literally sucks it dry with it's not going to work. You have to have all the cogs moving. You have to have the balance. And observing what we have created now over the last, and Sam's been at this for years doing the composting. He's been doing the work that the land has manifested around his being and his world. And then I've come, it's all frequency. Frequency matches frequency. Searching in my inner world where my nervous system feels that this compost, this soil, this space is nourishing, where I can flourish. And the last year and a half being officially in community has been the biggest lesson of learning about myself, the me functioning in the we of contribution in balance, giving and taking. It's the whole thing about sharing and speaking. I'm passionate about the being. I'm passionate about this home base, that this has to match my nature, my trees, the balance, the equilibrium. And all of that comes with all the little, big but little lessons of how to be and commune with others and learning about yourself through this process. And communication, we know with our household and our different homes and our space, is the absolute key for any future, whether it's in community, the world, politics, you name it. If we don't have communication, you have no commune, you have no community, you just have people living in a space.
I'd like to add to that before we invite Dave and to hear your opinion.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead, Dave.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead.
say, in that chat, I mentioned the Māori and the Atia. So the Atia is that liminal space. So, traditionally, been tribal people living in villages, living in communes. There'd be times where an unknown group would come to that village. And so you didn't know whether they were going to come for war or come to trade or whatever it was going to be. And so there's protocol for that liminal space, the atia, that meeting place in the middle where part of that protocol, and this is where the haka comes from, is to come along and you do that challenge and then the visitor offers the fern, the thing from nature. Oh no, the host puts down the fern, the visitor picks the fern up, and then they meet because it's obvious that they're not going to war. And then they share breath through the hongi and whatnot. But that whole idea of learning, of understanding what that liminal space is and being able to step out of your own worldview and into middle space without carrying your ego is such an important thing, especially today where we're getting this left, right, black, white schismogenesis that's pulling us apart and tribalizing us without any protocols for engagement in a safe way. So yeah, it's I just kind of think with what you're saying, Susie, that that we have to get back into community and building communities, whether it's big or small. Um, we've just got into a point where in the earlier conversations about time is that everybody feels time poor. I haven't got time to do that. I haven't got time to do this.
Mm.
And so things are just passed on, delegated to somebody else to do it for us and then set the rules for us. And so we're becoming less resilient. Now, as we talked about in the previous session, under a energy crisis, we're going to have to optimize ourselves and step back, consume less, and learn how to engage across those channels. Because I know there are a number of intentional communities that have fallen apart, and it usually comes down to personality conflicts and egos, um, and a particular worldview that doesn't quite fit with somebody else's worldview. So it's a time for us to sort of take some maturity and learn some lessons. Um, as I was saying in my session about time, um, Māori see the past in front of them and the future behind them. And that is because you can see into the past. It's there. You can see your genealogy, what you've done, the footsteps of the relationships, but you can't see into the future. Um, and we're kind of like looking into the future and forgetting about our past, forgetting about our lessons. So I think, this is why I wanted to bring that Pacific view, because Pacific people in their travels and their navigation across vast areas of the Pacific had to be very in tune to the environment so that they they sailed into that liminal space, but not without tools to guide them and knowledge and acute awareness. When we live in a very urban environment, we lose those skills. Things are built for us. We just consume, whether it's storytelling or whatever. We've just become passive consumers.
Mm.
Anyway, that's me.
I've got lots to say. Would anybody else like to say anything before I take a talking stick? um, yes, go ahead. If you eco civilization, okay.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry, I haven't changed the name yet, Violeta.
it's all good.
I will readjust. It's most interesting comments because this is a big question with everyone who's dealing with the concept of community altogether. It doesn't need to be just community of practice. And I often wonder, is it maybe, I mean, is there even a possibility of just keeping the communities together as a good goal? Looking throughout the history, every single human-built community, being even empire or just a little neighborhood, is going through these transformative changes, and it's not stable. So I wonder, even, let's say, eco-civilization, it's a very dynamic structure. Who really is the holder of the fire? I mean, I know that the fire keepers, whatever that means in different communities, is the one that is there all the time, and that role can be passed on. But the community is transforming all the time. And when the firekeeper is gone, community is gone too. So is this our illusion? Or, I mean, maybe we can shift the connotation and view over the communities and see them as this ever-evolving, constantly changing. And I was listening at the beginning also to, is the vision sometimes harmful because it's not changing quick enough? Is it intention or just maybe mission that allows people to freely come and go, and find maybe more sustainable attachment with the community. Just many open questions, because they are so important, because I believe the future will be built on the higher level of consciousness of community level. Otherwise this, whatever the top is, might never actually, we might not even need it in the future, cannot change. So any comments maybe about that?
Stella, you're on mute.
I know.
You look, same as you. I got lots to say, but
Yeah, I want to give a little bit of room because yeah.
do
I
you want to
think
go
we have
first, or anybody
yeah,
else
sure.
after Violetta?
I think it sort of comes a little bit back down to what Suzie. So there are three things that are three threads that are moving around inside my head, and I can see my heart. And what I love about this is I can see these threads and the through line through the entire connectathon, really, because I do think that I feel that sort of what Suzie mentioned, and the topic of this conversation is how we're tending to the we. And for me, what I love about wisdom paradoxes is that often how we tend to the we is by tending to the me, but not in a sort of selfish way, in a way to make sure that we are, when we're coming into those, I love that phrase, requisite tension, because it's going to happen. I think sort of that's the two things that are very important to me is acknowledging upfront, that not when we have confrontation or conflict or disagreement, not if, when. So we know that this is part of human nature, that we're going to question and we're going to have some conflict. But to Violetta's point, which I'm not sure you even knew that you made, curiosity is key. So for me, when we approach these requisite tension spaces, and I do think it's requisite, I don't think it is necessarily helpful to surround ourselves with people that are exactly like us. So that thing, being open to curiosity, being open, and that sense of openness can often only come when we are willing to work with our own ego, work with, and I love what Dave said, like work with being able to manage ourselves in the liminal space, this liminal space. So tending to the we often means tending to me. Am I actually meeting my own needs first before I'm attempting to meet the needs of others? In fact, you should be meeting the needs of others generally. How are we building community while we meet our own needs together is for me what is, in my experience of living in communities at this stage of my life, I function better in communities when I'm looking after myself. I have more to give in a community when I'm looking after myself. And it's a very counterintuitive, strange thing to consider that when we are wanting to build community and serve humanity, and I think we all are in this context, that in fact the best way to do that is by meeting our own needs first, making sure that we are, as an individual, you're healthy, you're okay, you're healthy. Then you can contribute in a meaningful way in community, firstly. Secondly, love. I can't remember who said it about, I honestly think the way to live in community is to live in community with the land. I truly believe that nature is our teacher, and that when we come into nature in community, there is something very fundamental. I want to say magical, but it's not even magical. It's fundamental that when we come into nature and we learn to live in the natural rhythm in nature, accessing a natural rhythm in community becomes easier because we're honoring nature, we're honoring the land, we're honoring Gaia. And then the third thread that I'm so glad I got to is actually manifestation. Because what I see a lot in society at the moment is people wanting to attract people to come and live in their communities. But that is outward focus. That is outward focus. That's external. And in my experience, manifestation and healthy community, again, happens when we are clear about our internal landscape. My internal landscape reflects my external landscape. So when I'm clear about being curious and being willing to be in requisite tension, knowing that that's going to grow me and grow my community, when I'm clear about what kind of food sources I want to have, when I'm clear about who I am and how I fit into the cogs that turn, then invariably what happens is the right people just suddenly appear. And we go, oh, how did that happen? How did you know we were doing this wonderful thing? That's how manifestation works. And it's never, for me, it's never about one or the other. It's always about both. Yes, and. So yes, there might be an application. Yes, you might be very, and part of that process in getting clear is making a list, etc. But it's also about holding something inside yourself that you're hoping to see outside of yourself. And then that's part of the manifestation. Then people who have similar, who have core values, who have a desire to see the world change in a way that is meaningful for everyone, then we start showing up, and then we can start to work together when we are tending to the me within the we. I'm done with my speech. Thank you so much for listening.
Maybe Alejandra, would you like to ask like
Yes, thank you. Trying to think about the question that Violeta brought. This is not an answer. It's just thinking around that. But I thought maybe we shouldn't look for who is the holder of the fire, but maybe how we hold the fire. I think it's about the process. And the process could be transgenerational, and the content of the process has to change because people is changing constantly. We are different today than a week before, and so right. So for me, the experience of this connectathon has been very insightful because I can see, the process within this community. I can see the process with my family, and I didn't plan that. I just saw some dots of connection in the middle of the chaos of my, my job and the doctoral degree, and it was like, okay, they are working the same thing, so let's connect. Let's organize a meeting to talk about more or less what we will share, and then listening the sessions today and listening to them in the meeting for me was like, okay, my uncle is sharing his life work to my daughter, and this is very personal, but we didn't have a connection for many years because families happens to have problems. But I decided to connect with him because I can see this transgenerational wisdom that we have to hold, right? And I see that I want that my daughters as could be part of that because the health of them could be there. So it's a process because the perspective of my daughter is different from my uncle. They live in different cities. She's living in Toronto, but she's representing Mexico now because she's Mexican. I live in Victoria. My uncle is in Morelia, Michoacan. But we know that we want to work on the health of the planet. And the way is connecting and listening to us and all the things that we have talked here before. So yeah, but maybe it's a process. So thank you.
I think what I was trying to say as well that I didn't wrap up, Violeta, in answering your question is that I don't think it should ever be one person's responsibility to keep the flame. I think we need to move into a space where that transitional process that we are in and that I think we need to learn to be in. I think for me, I think we need to learn to be in the liminal space. Full stop. Everything is in flux, everything is in change, and that's not ever going to change. I think we're facing the truth of the fact that nothing stays the same, it never will. our efforts to keep things the same are our efforts to control things. So, and that's out of lack of safety. So for me, the goal is to become sovereign and for everyone to take responsibility. So even in the community context, while we may assign leaders and mothers and fathers in the community, which is very important, don't misunderstand me. What I am saying is that I think the way of the future is that we encourage each individual into understanding that you are the keeper of the flame for all of us. We each keep the flame so that if and when whatever happens, it's never one person's responsibility to uphold an entire vision. It's never one person's responsibility to carry everything. And again, that might not mean that we might have sort of different designated roles. I'm very much into the archetypes, so we might all have different designated roles. But within that, for me, it's very important that community is about that it never falls upon one person's shoulders to do any one particular thing, including keep the flame. That's how I feel in terms of I want to take responsibility for my part in this. And I think we all should be doing that. And when we all doing that, there is less burden on a community, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to step in here and share this beautiful imagery that came out of this course that I'm helping pilot. I piloted on this course, and it's called the Essential Capacities Program. So the visual metaphor they use is a gyroscope, right? And the gyroscope, it's using this tech device called the Segway. So instead of balance, it is orienting to the context consistently by doing this sort of dance with change. And that to me looks like harmonizing within, finding our center and creating this harmony within ourselves, which then overflows into the world. We generate a field of harmony around us, right? So what happens is, I noticed in my life without community, my overflow was going into spaces where it was not returning back when I needed it. Now my overflow goes into a space where I know it's shared within, it's the space between, the space within what we call the social organism, which is our community that we call Bija Mara. And I know that by contributing my overflow, the abundance that comes from myself as a result of harmonizing, what happens is in that space, the harmony expands. So the harmony between each other, now we have harmony within with each other. And now that expands to our context, the nature around us, the land that we love and live upon. I thought that visual metaphor was really helpful, because life is changing so rapidly right now. The world that we have been used to it's literally dying before our eyes. And that is a good thing because it could not go on the way it is for much longer. So we do need that transition. The big question is that we have for ourselves is how do we transition gracefully? How do we do this with minimum damage to the ecosystem and minimum suffering, minimum doom? And as many of us have figured out, it's like this answering that yearning for community, not to go through this as an individual, atomized, suffering alone or playing alone or creating alone, because ecosystems don't work like that. Ecosystems work through intricate webs of connections and flows. There's always this movement in ecosystems. There's always diversity in ecosystems. That's how they evolve. So this yearning of community, it's what we call community. It's a very vast territory. It's something I'm seeing all around me. People have been calling for this in community. Now, how do we do it right? Well, we don't know yet, because like when Suzie approached me first to come live on the land, I didn't have the application form. I didn't have the vision written down in a document, but I had it in my heart. I had a very strong sense of where we were going and what was important to me. And I found out that that was important to Suzie as well. And then Stella came along and that was important to her as well. But now we're in a space where there's a need for these things. There's a need for more structure. It's absolutely necessary. We see we can't go forward without having more structure as more people show their interest. Lots of questions. So we're building for need now. We're creating the structure because the need exists, right? So I found that we can, with a lot of people that I've had conversations with regards to creating community, it started top down. It was very heady, very intellectual. Okay, we're going to have this great vision statement, and this is our mission statement. This is our purpose. And it would usually be one person or two people coming together to do this, but the need wasn't there. And so what I saw is like the felt embodied experience was missing. And in our case, now Stella, Suzie, and I, we've butted heads quite a few times, but we've created this field of safety, where the diversity of opinion, your diversity of perspective, your way of doing things, it's welcome. It's seen as a requisite for our co-evolution together. So yeah, there's a lot of threads that I've seen from Violetta and from Alejandra, and I hope I've covered some of those. But the thing I wanted to bring in quite strongly is that um, the vision does help. It is something that we orient to. It doesn't ha the vision can be a living statement. It's basically saying, how are our activities together going to shape the context at some point in the future into something that we share and value? So that could be vast, it could be metaphoric, it could be really, it's not a strong specific statement. The vision statement is how we see the world in the future as a result of our shared actions. And it's important because when somebody walks in and they offer their perspective or they offer something that they want to do, your vision statements are sitting up on the wall there at the entrance. And you filter through that vision statement. Does this align with our vision statement? And that way, every time when a new thing comes along, you don't have to stumble. You have something to orient towards. It sort of becomes our inner compass, in a sense. Okay, so let me stop there because I see some lovely hands up there, and I think it was Tim first. So let's go with Tim.
Sorry, I think Dave is before me, and then I'll go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just thought I'd put the queue up on there because I assume that your communities got land to grow food, and space to live in. But 60+% of the world's population live in urban environments, and a good amount of that urban environment's quite degraded, and people are really struggling, and we've touched on it before. So if we're going to address these things and build communities, we really need to think about communities existing in these urban environments and how we serve them and how we build those communities so that they are strong and resilient. In the last talk, I used my backdrop to post an image of an urban village that I brought architects together to design after our Christchurch earthquake that devastated my city. And so there was a competition to build an urban village inside that city over what was a park area. And it had a number of criteria because it had to be about innovation. When I assembled a bunch of people, I lived by the beach in a big old house, so I had Polynesian Māori architects, I had landscapers, I had urban designers, I had industrial designers from IKEA, and we spent a week walking on the beach talking about how people would connect. Before we put pen to paper and started to design anything, it was about urban spaces that are straight lines and long streets where people walk with their heads down and avoid each other and don't have that real connection to each other. And that's kind of getting worse in many ways. So that was our first challenge. Our second challenge was, how do we build a modern, energy efficient urban environment out of the debris that was left post the earthquake? And how could we do it so that this living system based on Polynesian concepts of design, intergenerational design, of having the artia space where people meet, having the whare tapere, the storyteller's house, that was the community market, having that transport link could all come together in a way that served that city. So I guess my point is that if we're going to talk about community, then we need to talk about the physical design of the community in regard to the needs of the people in that particular environment, and how we do that using an understanding of modern materials and adaptation to different things. Like we created this in three 6-story buildings, and a whare tapere, and daycare centres and food kitchens and food gardens on a small patch of land, so that it would adjust to the temperature outside and meet the wind, and allow your spaces to be both public and private. So you could close yourself off or you could open yourself up. So all of those dynamics, kind of, we need to go into those considerations. We don't get an opportunity to rebuild a city. And unfortunately, in my case, they thought I was, for an innovation challenge, we were too innovative. So that was that. Anyway, that's my thought.
Would you guys like to respond a little bit first before the next question? Is your mute button causing problems?
Okay, so I could respond just a little bit to that there. Dave, so like you mentioned land access. So land access is pivotal, right? The empire came and claimed the land, and then it created money and production based on claiming the land. So people getting access to land is fundamental. I cannot say how important it is to have a relationship with nature while we have a relationship with each other. And designing on that land is really important as well. So there's a couple of innovative solutions on how we can, people are experimenting with different ways on how to get back onto the land. A lot of that has to do with, let me say, the meme that I've been using is composting capitalism, right? I've been like pushing that out into the world. Capitalism did help us in many ways. There's a lot of signal that came from capitalism. I mean, this technology we have in front of us now is a result of capitalism, right? So let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. What we can do is redirect resources from that dying system into creating this great big compost pile of fertility that allows the new to grow. And one of the ways is innovative ways on investment, on land investment that funds regenerative communities of place, that gives young people, there are so many young people yearning to get on land. They want to really regenerate ecosystems. They want to grow their own food and create this healthy version of society, but they lack funding, they lack capital. They've got the skills, they've got the enthusiasm, they've got the energy. So they are what I call communities is a model for redirecting capital towards helping regenerative communities of place form within networks of shared vision. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. We need to get onto the land and we need to design those spaces in a way that serves our context and the people that live on it.
Okay, then let me jump in. So I have like an observation and a question. So or maybe an assumption. It strikes me as living in community must be very natural to us as a species because we grew up, we spent most of our time in tribes. So we should have the basic skill set. But also, and I thought it was interesting, the necessity of tension. And like families obviously have a lot of tension. There's a lot of and tribes will have a lot of tension. But in the old days, a tribe obviously everybody was blood, everybody was related, and So I'm thinking that there's like that force that drives us apart, and then the force that holds us together. And it's a bit, I think there's like, a tension, a suspension bridge. Without this tension, it could not be a bridge. So I'm thinking in that allegory, I'm interested in a community like yours. What is we know the push. The push is like, in the previous session, we talked a little about like the swipe. It's so easy to just walk away. Um, and I'm thinking that community, your tribe are the people that don't walk away. And I think we've all had people in our lives that we think are, part of our community, but they walk away when things get tense or for whatever reasons. So the people who stay, maybe is a better term, not walk away, but the people who stay are your community. So I'm wondering in the context of you and Hogsback, what is the counter force that keeps people staying? What is it that pulls you together when the conflict is pushing you apart? What is it that is the counterbalance to the outward pushing force? What is that in practical terms?
I mean, I could say that you have the freedom to go while you are welcome, So it's a personal choice that we make that, this is so much more important. It's more difficult to stay, right? But it's so much more important that I do because the learning and growth opportunities from staying, that friction is what is so nourishing. It turns out to be something that really nourishes my soul and helps me see the world with a wider lens, right? And just another response to that assumption or that observation term is that we don't really know how to live together. Empire culture has atomized society to such an extent that we've forgotten basic social skills. Whereas tribal culture, that social skills was core and intrinsic to who we were. I love this definition of wealth that I came by recently. Well, I don't know if I came by it. Maybe I was thinking about it, and it's like wealth is your capacity to give. Wealth is measured by your capacity to give, not your bank balance, how much you have accumulated. And that comes from, I think that comes from a tribal cultural perspective. So it's something that we can take once again. We can, because there's high signal in that, we can integrate that tribal way of seeing the world with the benefits that capitalism and empire culture have given us to create what the new culture is. And who knows what the new culture is, right? It's something we have to live into, experiment into. People are calling it the planetary culture, a systems aware culture that this planet is one large social organism, one large ecosystem, and changes here, actions here has repercussions throughout the planet. Yeah, let me stop there. I think Violeta and all these people, Violeta, Alejandra.
Well, so many questions, really, because I think it's a very important discussion popping up everywhere on all levels of structure of our society. And I was wondering, you mentioned before that you are now going through the experience of needing a structure. And as I imposed the question already in the comment, is what would you describe as the core element? How do you go about? I mean, as soon as you say the word structure, of course, we're talking about static momentum, which, of course, it goes against what we talked about before, fluidity and, all constantly changing and readjusting. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And for eco-civilization, we try to just experiment with this highest level of the way how nature is coming together, which for me is still the biggest teacher. So we defined like lands, communities, beings, relationships, and consciousness as like 5 major organizational elements. But we are still experiencing. I don't know. Is this what's going to come out at the end? So I wonder, how do you go about? What's your wisdom here? What can you share about that?
I'll hop in here because I'm still sort of, I also sort of want to, it's part of my response to San as well. Sim, with your question about being those who stay. And I actually disagree with you a little bit, San, when you said that you're choosing to stay because you know it's harder to stay. You know that there's growth in choosing to stay when it feels difficult to stay. And this is part of what I am responding to you, and I wanted to respond to you earlier, Violetta, because I think the I think, and it's exactly this moment. It's a moment, and I think our long-term goal is, and I love the way you use the word sensing, Violetta, because I really do believe that it's about sensing moment to moment. This moment is different to the moment that will happen tomorrow. So context, what is this moment about now? And bearing in mind that our systems and structures, which include architecture and how we move in spaces, because we know that society has been set up in a specific way to keep us functioning and moving in a specific way, not built for freedom. So all of our systems and structures, and I know they need to be malleable. The systems support humanity, not the other way around. So a lot of the time, our frustration is that we want a system, we want a list of rules and regulations to be able to make us feel safe when we don't have the answer to us. When we are having to sit in community, and I think it was who's a Quaker. I love the Quaker concept of sitting in community together. I love that we don't move forward until we, as a collective, have arrived at a place that feels cohesive and safe to move forward. That we don't bulldoze each other with decisions and with structures and with systems. That we actually need to build in. And again, how do we know this is the key? Because the key is that where we lack, our biggest area of lack is time. We speak in time in terms of scarcity. That's why it's really important that we stop and take the time to allow those moments of sensing. That's why I know that's why the times that we've butted heads, as it were, and I've butted some serious heads in this community, it's been a walk in the park, which brings me back to my point with you, San. I'm staying because it is easier, not because it's harder. I'm choosing to stay in this community because I found people who stop, who slow down, who listen to themselves and to me. I feel safe. It is easier for me to stay in a community where I feel safe and heard, and I know that each person in that space is taking responsibility, is being responsible for being the keeper of the flame for themselves and for the community. So I'm willing to stay longer to the systems and the structures. Because again, I think that's part of the thing that we have to acknowledge is that, guys, the systems and the structures, we're not going to build them and then they're going to stay the same. Even with the architecture, we need to be materials that can compost, that can change and that can grow. That's why we need them to be more natural, so that they can be part of the environment and not isolate themselves from the environment. So for me, the big question is exactly what you said, Violetta. How are we sensing moment to moment? And how are we then allowing those structures that we are building, those rules, those regulations, how do we allow them to be malleable so that they can support us as we change and not, as we have seen historically, we become servants to the structure and not the other way around? That's what feels good to me. That makes sense.
I'm going to pass it on to Alejandra, but I just wanted to say, in adding to what Stella said, that the hard stuff is easier. The hard stuff becomes easier when you make that commitment. Alejandra, before I respond to structure.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few ideas about the tension and this comment from Violetta of sensing and moving forward. Yes, I thought in some things that maybe we want to, map there. And it's like Donella Meadow was talking about looking for the energy, and when I think in this issue of looking for the energy, I think when you drive a car and you're in a curve, you have to keep the curve and maintain the energy right there. So, or when you swim in the ocean, you have to feel the movement of the water and navigate according to that. You cannot be there battling with the energy of the ocean, but you can listen to the ocean, feel the ocean, and navigate in a way that eventually the ocean will move you to a better place if you have the current against you. So yeah, it's I think we have to think conflict is spectable in terms of this tension that Tim was talking about. Let's keep the energy, feel the energy and listen to the wisdom of the energy and the collective learning that we are building now. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about structure, and that energy, keeping that energy flowing. Structure actually helps the energy flow. Light structure makes it easier. It takes away the cognitive load. You know how this works, right? And then you don't have to think about it anymore. Your energy can go towards more creative pursuits. Right. So, but structure is really, really practically important. Like when a new person comes onto the land now, we realize the importance that now three of us need to make a decision about this person. What is their role? How do they move through time within our space? When do they become a permanent member? And let's say at some point, because we humans are we're such wonderful beings. We have all these interesting ideas and we want to do things differently. I really celebrate that about us. That's why I think we are a keystone species on this planet. But that can be controversial to some. But anyway, somebody comes along and they decide, okay, I want to now go surf by the ocean. I'm tired of living by the mountain and going through the seasonal changes and struggling with winter. How do we create structure to help that process happen in a graceful way? How can a person transfer their value that they've given with all their heart and passion to this land, to our community, to another community? Now, that's the kind of structure I find really interesting. Because our empire system doesn't do that. You have to sell your house, you have to get a passport, get a new, do all these different kind of bureaucratic administrative things that are energy drains. Whereas we can create structure, and that's something I'm working passionately on. It's like my life purpose is to create that sort of network, that system where we have that fluidity and that freedom to move, where freedom is center and core to our experience. Yeah, okay. I gotta stop there again because I could go on and on.
So I'm gonna jump in because we're approaching the end of the hour, but I'd love you to stay for the next hour because actually we're going to be talking about this in this hour too. And I think that the next hour's theme is the Moloch, which is like an allegory for I guess late capitalist society. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what are the counterpoints. So maybe if we round off now and take 2 minutes to stretch our legs, and then we'll jump straight back into it, if that sounds good. Fantastic. Okay, everyone, I'm going to turn off the recording for now. Stop.